Welcome to Political Prep,
where school is always in session.
We're the two teachers, and we're here to make the complex simple,
the confusing clear.
Andy, we're talking today about our decennial district drawing. Inside the Beltway, everyone's beginning to buzz now about redistricting and gerrymandering. The question is, do you, the citizen, understand?
Well, a lot of vocabulary to dissect here, including the fact that the census is decennial every 10 years. It counts the population, and that's a crucial element of reapportionment.
That's right. The U.S. Constitution mandates that every 10 years the population to be counted. But it's not just a trivial contest. We're talking about reapportioning the U.S. Congress. There are 435 seats, and every state's representation is based upon that population.
So the largest states, the most populated states like California, they have the most representatives in the House. California has 53. The least populated states, like Wyoming, Delaware, North and South Dakota, they only have one representative in the House of Representatives, and all the other states are somewhere in between.
But because populations shift, those congressional numbers invariably change every 10 years. And when they change, the reapportionment has to redistrict, which means those states have to draw new congressional district lines to reflect the changes in population. Andy, that's where the skullduggery begins.
Well, the redistricting process is governed by certain rules, most notably from the Supreme Court cases Baker versus Carr and Wesbury versus Sanders, which dictated in the 1960s that every state with multiple districts, in those districts, they have to have the identical populations so that we can come up with the mathematical formula of one man, one vote. You can't have one district with 10,000 voters in another district with 100,000. That's illegal based on Baker versus Carr.
Let's not think this redistricting, this redrawing of congressional lines is done in a bipartisan fashion. No, most states governed by majority parties allow the majority parties in the state legislatures to redraw those lines with political purposes in mind. Andy, when the districts are redrawn with political ramifications, we call that gerrymandering.
Yeah, gerrymandering, redrawing those lines with a political purpose, and typically that leads to a very high incumbency rate in the House of Representatives. Remember, an incumbent in the House of Representatives is much more likely to win re-election than an incumbent senator. And that's mostly because those incumbent representatives have had their districts hand-drawn through very sophisticated computer models these days as a way to almost rig the outcome before the election has even occurred. And that's why gerrymandering is so controversial.
Rig the outcomes. Andy, you're talking as if this is hardball at its highest levels of political partisanship. And absolutely right on that call. Gerrymandering means that a majority political party will draw a line to advantage members of their political party, to advantage the incumbents of the majority party. Andy, gerrymandering to me sounds like the political parties choose us rather than we choose them in the upcoming election.
Well, it's always been controversial from the first time it was done, and we dubbed it gerrymandering. It's still controversial. A few states have tried to move to a nonpartisan process or more of a neutral process, but the vast majority of states still undergo this decennial tradition of trying to stick it to their political opponents through redrawing congressional district lines.
Now, Andy, before we leave, the Supreme Court has come into play here, and they haven't allowed unlimited skullduggery in the gerrymandering field. There are some limits, Andy. Gerrymandered districts must be equal in population. Yeah, they also must be contiguous.
They have to be, all the land in that district has to connect. You can't have an island over here and an island over there.
The Supreme Court hasn't allowed to dilute minority groups. But Andy, here's the critical point. The Supreme Court has been given an opportunity to address political gerrymandering, and they've decided not to. This is a part of the political process that takes place every 10 years. It's our decennial district drawing, and you, the citizen, need to know more about it. We're the two teachers. No fancy words.
No fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.